Jack Turner rode at the front of the herd, his hat pulled low to keep out the beating sun. The cattle moved slowly through the dry Arizona grass, kicking up dust with every step. Jack had spent weeks on the open range with the other cowboys, driving steers across the desert toward a small frontier outpost. The land seemed endless, stretching far beyond what any man could see. It was a tough life, but Jack enjoyed the freedom. Sometimes at night he would look up and see the stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The days were long and hot, but the promise of reaching town kept everyone moving. Jack's horse, a sturdy bay named Buck, was tired after so many miles ahead. The silhouette of the wooden outpost rose from the desert. The building looked worn, with its roof patched by old tin sheets and its walls faded by the sun. Jack felt the excitement in his chest. Soon he would sleep in a real bed, eat fresh food, and enjoy cold drinks. The other cowboys talked quietly among themselves, each dreaming of rest. The outpost sat at a crossroads, dusty and busy. Wagons creaked past carrying supplies, and people, cowboys, traders, and travelers gathered here to swap stories and goods. Jack knew only a few people in town, but everyone knew the outpost was a place where fortunes changed fast. The cattle would be sold for a decent price, enough to pay everyone for their hard work. As Jack and his crew approached the entrance, the herd filled the main street. Some townspeople came out to watch, a few waving hello. The sheriff, a tall man with graying hair and a sharp look in his eye, nodded at Jack and his men. Jack gave a quick smile but kept his mouth shut. He never trusted lawmen, not after what happened at the last town. That afternoon was chaotic. Cattle were moved into pens behind the outpost. Cowboys took turns watering their tired horses and smoothing down dust-caked saddles. The owner of the outpost, Mrs. O'Shea, welcomed the cowboys with warm bread and salty stew. She liked to hear their stories, especially from the new hands. Jack always kept his stories short. He preferred to listen rather than talk. The outpost filled with chatter as more people arrived. Some were traders from the Apache Nation, who came with beautiful blankets, beads, and handmade bows. Many cowboys were curious but careful around the Apache. Few really understood their language, but everyone respected how quietly they moved and how they watched everything closely. Jack took a seat near the big window to rest, watching the street. He saw two Apache traders enter with a young woman between them. Her hair was braided with colored string, and she wore a shirt with bright patterns. She carried a woven basket, carefully resting it on the counter to display her goods. Jack watched quietly, noting the confidence in her walk. The saloon was the liveliest part of the outpost that evening. Tired cowboys gathered there to play cards and drink. Laughter and music drifted out into the street. Jack was usually quiet but joined for a single drink. He loved listening to the piano player who could make old tunes sound new. Some ranchers danced with the locals. Others argued about prices for cattle and supplies. Jack kept out of most arguments. He had learned trouble found a man faster than he could run. As night settled, the outpost glowed with lantern light. Shadows stretched along the street. Cowboys laughed. Apache traders finished their business. Jack stretched out on his cot, glad to be off the trail, yet even in comfort. Jack sensed tension in the town. He noticed how certain Apache traders looked at the cowboys with cautious eyes. Older ranchers warned the young ones not to get too proud or foolish. Jack remembered their words but pushed aside the worries. For tonight, everyone was safe and tired. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Jack drifted to sleep with the sounds of distant laughter and clinking glasses. In the quiet, he felt a restless sense of adventure mixed with unease. The cattle drive had gone well, but the outpost was not as simple as it appeared. Jack had a feeling something unexpected was waiting for him just around the corner. For now, he tried not to think about it, letting sleep take him away as the stars shone bright above the desert sky. The sun disappeared behind the distant mesas, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Jack Turner washed his face at the water trough outside the outpost, scrubbing away the trail dust that had settled into every crease of his skin. The cold water shocked him awake, and he felt ready for whatever the evening would bring. Around him, other cowboys were doing the same, laughing and joking about the long weeks behind them. The saloon doors swung open as Jack stepped inside. The place was already alive with noise and movement. A piano player sat in the corner, fingers dancing across the keys with practiced ease. The music filled the room, mixing with the sound of boots on wooden floors and glasses clinking together. Smoke from cigars hung in the air like a thin fog. Cowboys sat at round tables playing cards, their faces serious as they studied their hands. Some men leaned against the bar, ordering whiskey and beer from the bartender who moved quickly between bottles and glasses. Jack found a spot near the middle of the room and ordered a drink. The whiskey burned going down, but it felt good after so many dry days on the trail. He watched the room with quiet interest. A few ranchers he recognized nodded in his direction. Jack nodded back but kept to himself. He had learned long ago that trouble often started with too much talking. The saloon was the beating heart of the outpost. Every kind of person passed through its doors: miners with dirt under their nails, traders with goods to sell, drifters looking for work, and cowboys like Jack who needed rest before the next job. Women in bright dresses moved between tables, serving drinks and making conversation. Their laughter was loud and easy, adding to the lively atmosphere. As the night deepened, the saloon grew more crowded. Men pushed closer together, voices rising to be heard over the music and chatter. Jack ordered a second drink, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to relax. Then the doors swung open again, and the room changed. A group of Apache traders entered, moving quietly through the crowd. They were dressed in traditional clothing, their faces calm and unreadable. The cowboys nearest the door fell silent. Watching the newcomers with cautious eyes, Jack had seen Apache traders before, but something about this moment felt different. The air grew heavier, as if everyone was holding their breath. Among the traders was a young Apache woman. She walked with confidence, her head held high despite the stares from around the room. Her shirt was decorated with intricate patterns, the kind of work that took skill and patience. She carried a woven basket filled with handmade goods, blankets with geometric designs, beaded jewelry, and small carved figures. Her presence commanded attention without her saying a word. The Apache traders approached the bar, speaking in low voices to the bartender. They were there to trade, as they had done many times before. The bartender nodded and gestured toward a table where goods could be displayed. The young woman set down her basket carefully, arranging the items so people could see them clearly. Some cowboys at nearby tables leaned in to look, their curiosity getting the better of their caution. The blankets were beautiful, tightly woven with colors that seemed to glow in the lantern light. The beadwork was delicate and precise, each piece a small work of art. A few men asked about prices, and the woman answered in English, her voice steady and clear. Jack watched from his spot at the bar. His third drink sat untouched in front of him. Something about the scene bothered him, though he could not say exactly what. Maybe it was the way some of the cowboys looked at the traders, with suspicion instead of respect. Maybe it was the tension that had crept into the room since they arrived. One of Jack's friends, a loud cowboy named Hank, made a comment that drew laughter from the men around him. The joke was crude, meant to show off in front of the others. The Apache woman did not react, but Jack saw her jaw tighten slightly. She continued to display her goods. Ignoring the rudeness, the piano player kept playing, but the music seemed quieter now, as if even the sound was nervous. Conversations resumed, but they were more guarded. People spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward the Apache traders between sentences. Jack felt the whiskey warming his blood. Loosening his thoughts, he had always been quick to react, especially when he felt challenged or disrespected. Tonight, the alcohol was making him bolder than usual. He told himself he was just having a good time, that there was no harm in a little fun. As the evening wore on, more drinks were poured and more bets were placed at the card tables. The saloon grew louder again, the earlier tension fading into the background noise. But beneath the laughter and music, something darker was building. Jack could feel it in the pit of his stomach, a restless energy that had no outlet. The Apache traders finished showing their goods and began packing what had not sold. They moved efficiently, speaking quietly among themselves. The young woman folded her blankets with care. Placing them back into the basket, she seemed eager to leave. Sensing the unfriendly atmosphere, Jack watched her closely now. His vision slightly blurred from the alcohol. Part of him knew he should look away, should let them leave in peace, but another part, the reckless part fueled by whiskey and pride, wanted to make his mark, to show he was not afraid of anyone. The room was still spinning with noise and movement as the Apache traders moved toward the door. Jack's friends were laughing at another joke, and someone slapped him on the back. The night felt wild and unpredictable, like anything could happen. The Apache traders moved toward the saloon doors. Their business for the evening nearly finished. The young woman carried her basket on one arm, the unsold blankets folded neatly inside. Her companions walked beside her, their expressions calm but watchful. They had traded in this outpost before and knew how quickly moods could shift when whiskey flowed freely. Jack Turner felt the alcohol buzzing in his head, making everything seem brighter and louder than it should be. His friends were still laughing around him, slapping the table and making crude jokes that grew bolder with each round of drinks. Hank, the loudest of the group, kept glancing toward the Apache traders with a smirk on his face. He enjoyed stirring up trouble, especially when he had an audience. "Look at them fancy blankets," Hank said loud enough for half the room to hear. "Probably asking 10 times what they're worth," a few cowboys chuckled, though some of the older ranchers shot warning looks in their direction. These men had lived on the frontier long enough to know that disrespecting Apache traders was dangerous business. They had seen conflicts erupt over smaller offenses, watched good men die because someone's pride got in the way of common sense. But Jack was not thinking about consequences. The whiskey had stripped away his better judgment, leaving only the reckless young man who wanted to prove himself. He had spent weeks taking orders on the cattle drive, eating dust and working until his hands bled. Tonight he wanted to feel powerful, to show everyone in the saloon that he answered to no one. The Apache woman passed near Jack's table on her way to the door. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the stares and whispers. Her dignity was clear in every step, and that somehow made Jack angrier. He could not explain why her composure bothered him, but it did. "Hey," Jack called out, his voice cutting through the noise. The woman paused but did not turn around. Her companions stopped as well, their bodies tensing. The saloon grew quieter, conversations dying as people sensed something brewing. "I'm talking to you," Jack said, standing up from his chair. The woman finally turned to face him, her dark eyes steady and unafraid. "What do you want?" she asked in clear English. Jack stepped closer, swaying slightly. "I want to see what you're selling that's so special," he said. Reaching toward her basket, one of the Apache men moved to intervene, but the woman held up her hand, stopping him. She did not want violence, not here, not over this. "We are finished trading for tonight," she said firmly. "Please let us pass," but Jack was not interested in listening. The room was watching now, and he felt the weight of all those eyes. Backing down would make him look weak, and Jack Turner did not back down from anyone. He grabbed the edge of the basket, pulling it toward him to look inside. "Jack, leave it alone," one of the older cowboys warned from across the room. Jack ignored him. His fingers caught on one of the blankets, and he yanked it out roughly. "This is what everyone's talking about," he said mockingly, holding up the woven fabric. "Looks like something my grandmother could make." The insult hung in the air. Sharp and ugly, the Apache woman's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. "Put it back," she said. "Or what?" Jack challenged, his pride now fully in control. What happened next occurred in seconds, but it would be burned into everyone's memory for years. The woman reached to take the blanket back, and Jack, feeling cornered and angry, grabbed her arm to stop her in the struggle. His other hand caught the collar of her shirt. The fabric was old, worn from use, and it tore easily under the force. The ripping sound cut through the saloon like a gunshot. The woman stumbled backward, clutching the torn shirt to cover herself. Her face showed shock first, then humiliation, then rage. The Apache men with her moved instantly, their hands going to their belts. But she stopped them again with a sharp word in their language. The entire saloon had gone silent. Even the piano player had stopped. His hands frozen above the keys, every person in the room understood what had just happened. Jack had not just insulted an Apache woman, he had physically assaulted her. Disrespected her in front of witnesses from both communities. Jack stood there, suddenly realizing the enormity of his mistake. The whiskey fog was starting to clear. Replaced by cold dread, he opened his mouth to say something. But no words came out. The Apache woman straightened her shoulders. Her eyes burning with fury and wounded pride, she said something in her native language. Her voice low and controlled, the words sounded like a promise. The other traders gathered around her protectively, creating a barrier between her and Jack. "You will regret this," one of the Apache men said in English. His voice deadly calm. "This is not finished." They turned and left the saloon, moving quickly but with dignity intact. The doors swung shut behind them, leaving the room in stunned silence. For a long moment nobody moved, then the older ranchers began shaking their heads. Their faces grim. They had seen this story before, and they knew how it ended. "Boy, do you have any idea what you just did?" The sheriff said, appearing from the corner where he had been watching. Jack tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out hollow. "It was an accident," he said weakly. "Accident or not." "You just made an enemy of the Apache?" an old rancher said, standing up from his table. "And they don't forget?" The saloon slowly came back to life. But the mood had changed completely. People spoke in hushed, worried tones. Some cowboys began making plans to leave town early, not wanting to be anywhere near when consequences arrived. Jack sat back down, his hands shaking slightly. He ordered another drink, trying to steady his nerves. His friends had gone quiet, no longer joking or laughing. They knew trouble was coming. Outside, the night had grown darker. Stars dotted the sky above the desert. The Apache traders disappeared into the darkness. Carrying news of what had happened back to their people, Jack told himself everything would be fine. That people were overreacting, but deep down, in a place the whiskey could not reach, he knew better. He had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The outpost settled into an uneasy night, and somewhere in the distance, drums began to beat. Morning came too quickly for Jack Turner. He woke with his head pounding and his mouth dry as desert sand. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the wooden walls of the bunkhouse, making him squint and turn away. For a brief moment, he forgot everything that had happened the night before. Then the memories came flooding back, and his stomach turned. Jack sat up slowly, looking around at the other cowboys who were already awake. Some were packing their belongings, moving with unusual urgency. Others sat on their bunks, speaking in low voices and glancing in his direction. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, completely different from the relaxed mood of yesterday. "Morning," Jack muttered, but nobody responded. He stood and walked outside, needing fresh air and water. The outpost was already busy despite the early hour. Wagons were being loaded, horses saddled, and families preparing to leave. Jack noticed that many of the people moving about were looking over their shoulders nervously, as if expecting something terrible to appear on the horizon. At the water trough, Jack splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the fog in his head. His hands were still shaking slightly, though whether from the alcohol or fear, he could not tell. He drank deeply, the water somewhat soothing his parched throat. "You look like death," a voice said behind him. Jack turned to see Tommy, one of the younger cowboys from the drive. Tommy was barely 20, with a sunburned face and worried eyes. "Everyone's talking about what you did," Tommy continued. "The Apache traders left before dawn, rode out fast toward their territory." "So what?" Jack said, trying to sound confident. "They got their feelings hurt and went home. That's the end of it." Tommy shook his head slowly. "That ain't how it works with the Apache?" "Jack, my uncle told me stories. They don't let disrespect slide. Especially not what you did to that woman. She wasn't just anyone. Some folks are saying she's the daughter of one of their leaders. Jack felt ice form in his chest. How would anyone know that? He asked. Mrs. O'Shea speaks some of their language, Tommy explained. She heard them talking last night after they left the saloon. Said the woman's father is a respected warrior. Been fighting to protect their people for 30 years, Jack cursed under his breath. This was worse than he thought. He had assumed the woman was just another traitor, someone who would complain and then forget about it. Now he was learning she had family, powerful family, who would want justice for what he had done throughout the morning. More details spread through the outpost like wildfire. People who had been at the saloon told and retold the story, each version slightly different but all ending the same way. Jack Turner had shamed an Apache woman in front of witnesses, and now everyone would pay the price. The sheriff found Jack near the stables around midday. The lawman's face was serious, his hand resting on his gun belt. We need to talk, he said. They walked to the sheriff's office, a small building at the edge of the outpost inside. The sheriff sat behind a worn desk covered with papers and maps. He gestured for Jack to sit, but Jack remained standing. You've created a serious problem, the sheriff began. Not just for yourself, but for everyone here. The Apache have been peaceful with this outpost for 3 years. We trade fairly, we respect each other's space. You've threatened all of that. It was just a misunderstanding, Jack protested. Things got out of hand. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter what you meant, the sheriff interrupted. What matters is what you did. You assaulted a woman, tore her clothing, humiliated her in public, if that happened to a white woman. You'd already be in chains? Jack had no response to that. I've sent word to Fort Grant asking for soldiers, the sheriff continued. But they're 3 days away at best in the meantime. We need to prepare for the possibility that the Apache will come looking for you. You really think they'll attack the whole outpost over this? Jack asked. The sheriff leaned back in his chair, studying Jack with tired eyes. I think they'll do whatever their honor demands. And you've given them every reason to demand justice. The question is whether they'll accept you alone or hold all of us responsible. Jack left the office feeling worse than when he entered. He walked through the outpost, noticing how people avoided his gaze. Mothers pulled their children inside when he passed. Shopkeepers closed their doors early. Even his fellow cowboys kept their distance, treating him like he carried a plague. By afternoon, some families had already left, loading their wagons and heading east toward safer settlements. Those who remained began fortifying their positions. Men checked their rifles and counted ammunition. Barrels were filled with water in case of siege. Windows were boarded up in the most vulnerable buildings. Mrs. O'Shea found Jack sitting alone behind the general store. She was a tough Irish woman who had survived 2 husbands and countless hardships on the frontier. You've made quite a mess? Boy, she said, not unkindly. I know, Jack admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The Apache value honor above almost everything, she explained. What you did wasn't just an insult, it was an attack on that woman's dignity. Her family's reputation, they'll have to respond. It's their way. What should I do? Jack asked, feeling lost. You could run, Mrs. O'Shea said. Get on your horse and ride as far as you can. Maybe they'll be satisfied chasing you and leave the rest of us alone. Jack considered this. Part of him wanted to run, to escape the consequences of his drunken stupidity, but another part, the stubborn pride that had gotten him into this mess, refused to show cowardice. I'll stay, he said finally. Mrs. O'Shea nodded slowly. Then you'd better prepare yourself. Boy, because when the Apache come, and they will come, you'll face judgment one way or another. She walked away, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. The sun was high overhead now, beating down mercilessly. In the distance, beyond the outpost, the desert stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the Apache were gathering. Preparing their response, Jack Turner had gambled with his pride and lost. Now he would have to pay the price. The only question was how high that price would be, and whether anyone else would have to pay it with him. The outpost waited, tense and afraid, for whatever came next. 3 days passed with agonizing slowness. The outpost had transformed into a fortress of worry and preparation. Every able-bodied man worked to strengthen defenses, reinforcing wooden barriers and checking weapons. The atmosphere was suffocating, thick with dread and anticipation. Jack moved through it all like a ghost, watching people prepare for a war that his actions had started. Old Bill was the first to really confront him. Bill had been on the frontier for 40 years, watching empires rise and fall, seeing Indians and settlers clash in bloody conflicts. He found Jack checking the saddle on his horse early one morning, before most of the outpost was awake. "You're thinking about running," Bill said. It was not a question. Jack looked up, startled. "What makes you say that?" "Because that's what I would be thinking," Bill replied, settling onto a nearby bench with a grunt. "And I've been alive long enough to know that running sometimes is the smartest thing a man can do." "I'm not running," Jack said. But his voice wavered. Bill smiled sadly. "Pride and stupidity, they usually go hand in hand, look, boy. I fought in the Mexican War. I've seen Apache warriors in action. They're not like us. They don't follow rules we understand. They move like ghosts, strike like lightning, and disappear before you know what hit you. So what are you saying?" Jack asked. "I'm saying you should leave." "Tonight if possible," Bill said seriously. "The Apache won't attack as long as you're here because they want you. They've sworn to have you answer for what you did. If you run, you take the target off this place. Give the townspeople a chance to survive," Jack wanted to argue, wanted to claim that he was brave enough to face whatever came. But looking into Bill's weathered face, he saw no judgment, only the honest assessment of a man who had seen too much. "I can't just abandon everyone," Jack said weakly. "You won't be abandoning them. You'll be saving them." Bill stood slowly, his joints cracking audibly. "There's a difference, boy. And it's not a small one." That evening, Jack encountered Maria, the daughter of one of the ranchers. She was intelligent and strong-willed. Known for speaking her mind despite being a woman in a man's world, she cornered him near the corrals. "You need to understand what you've done," she said, without preamble. "That woman you attacked, her name is Lena. She's betrothed to a warrior, a man named Dakota. He's considered one of the finest fighters among their people." Jack felt his stomach drop. "How do you know this?" "Because I talk to people, I listen," Maria said sharply. "Lena came to my father's ranch once. She was kind and dignified. She's someone's daughter. Someone's sister? Someone's future wife? You didn't just shame her, you shamed everyone connected to her. I didn't mean—" Jack started. "Stop saying that," Maria interrupted. "Your intentions don't matter anymore. Actions are what matter now. And your actions were shameful." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "Dakota will come for you." "My father's heard rumors through traders. They say he's already riding toward the outpost. He's coming to answer your insult with the only language you'll understand." Jack had no response. The weight of what he had done was finally settling fully on his shoulders. That night, the sheriff called a meeting in the main hall of the outpost. Every person who could leave had already done so. Only the stubborn ones remained, those too old to move, those who owned property they would not abandon, and those who worked for others and had nowhere else to go. The sheriff stood at the front, his face grim. "We've received confirmation that Apache warriors are gathering," the sheriff announced. "How many? We're not certain, but estimates range from 100 to 300 warriors," the crowd gasped. People looked at each other with fear in their eyes. "They're gathering because of one man's actions," the sheriff continued, pointing toward Jack. "I'm not here to judge what happened, but I am here to prepare for what's coming." An old man stood up. "We should give them the boy." "Turn him over and they'll leave us be," several people murmured in agreement. Jack felt their eyes on him, felt the weight of their judgment. "That might work," another woman said. "If we offer him—" "Maybe they'll take him and go." The sheriff held up his hand. "That's not the kind of people we are. We don't hand over our own. Not to be murdered in revenge. If we do that, we're no better than animals." "Better animals than dead," someone shouted. The meeting descended into chaos, people arguing about what should be done, whether to fight, whether to surrender Jack, whether to negotiate. The sheriff eventually dismissed them. Unable to maintain order over the following days, Jack overheard more conversations. More warnings, more people approached him, trying to convince him to leave. Some were genuinely concerned for the outpost's safety, others simply wanted him gone. Regardless of the consequences, one evening, Tommy found him sitting alone on the edge of town. "I've got horses ready," Tommy said quietly. "Good ones, they can carry you far and fast. You could be out of Apache territory by morning if you ride hard." Jack looked at his young friend. Tommy had always been kind to him. Never judgmental. "Why are you helping me?" Jack asked. "Because I don't think you deserve to die," Tommy said simply. "And I don't think the outpost deserves to burn because of one mistake." Jack considered the offer. The temptation to run was strong. To escape the consequences, to live another day. But something inside him had shifted, some stubborn kernel of integrity that had survived his drunken foolishness. "I'm staying," Jack said finally. Tommy nodded as if he had expected that answer. "Then I hope you're ready, because they're coming soon." "I can feel it in the air." That night, Jack lay awake, listening to the wind whisper across the desert. Somewhere out there, warriors were riding toward him. Carrying justice and revenge in their hearts, he had made his choice to stay. Now he would have to live with the consequences or die with them. The warnings were over. The reckoning was coming. The first sign came before dawn. A scout rode into the outpost on an exhausted horse, his face pale with fear. "They're coming," he gasped to the sheriff. "Maybe 4 hours away, moving fast from the north." The outpost exploded into controlled chaos. Men rushed to their positions, tightening the final bolts on barricades and making sure rifles were loaded. Women and children were moved to the center buildings, the safest places if fighting broke out. The sheriff rang the bell 3 times, the signal that danger was approaching. Jack stood on the roof of the main building, looking out toward the desert. The horizon was still dark, the sun not yet risen, but he could feel something in the air, a heaviness, a presence, as if the very land was holding its breath as the sun climbed higher. The first dust clouds appeared on the horizon. Jack watched them grow larger, watched them multiply. The dust rose higher and higher, turning the distant desert into a swirling brown cloud. His heart began to pound in his chest, his mouth went dry. "How many?" the sheriff asked, climbing up beside him. "I can't tell yet," Jack replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Too much dust. More people gathered on rooftops and behind barricades. Watching the approaching storm, the dust grew larger, closer. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate slightly, the tremor of hundreds of hooves striking the earth in unison. Then they emerged from the dust, Apache warriors, arranged in a perfect line that stretched across the entire horizon. They rode slowly, deliberately, their horses moving in perfect synchronization. No one fired, no one shouted. They simply came forward. A tide of warriors dressed in traditional clothing, bows and rifles held across their bodies. Jack counted as many as he could, losing track after 200. The number was staggering, overwhelming. There were easily 300 or more, perhaps even closer to 400. The entire Apache force seemed to have gathered for this moment. The warriors halted just beyond rifle range of the outpost, forming a massive semicircle that surrounded the settlement on 3 sides. The sight was terrifying and beautiful at the same time, disciplined and powerful. Jack understood then why these people had resisted conquest for so long, why they had earned the respect and fear of everyone in the territory. A single rider broke from the center of the Apache line. Moving forward slowly, he was tall even from a distance, with broad shoulders and the bearing of a man accustomed to authority. This had to be Dakota, the warrior who had come for Jack's blood. Dakota approached until he was close enough to be heard without shouting. His face was stern and unreadable. His dark eyes fixed on the outpost, he raised one hand, and the entire Apache force went completely silent. Even the horses seemed to stop moving. "I am Dakota," he called out in clear English, his voice carrying easily across the space between them. "I have come for the man who dishonored Lena, daughter of our people, sister of warriors." The sheriff stepped forward. his hands visible and empty, showing no threat. "I am the lawman here," he said. "We can talk about this. Negotiate a solution." Dakota shook his head slowly. "There is nothing to negotiate. A man committed a grave crime. He must answer for it. If we give him to you, will you leave the others alone?" The sheriff asked. Dakota was silent for a long moment, his eyes still fixed on the outpost. "The crime was against our people, against our honor. The punishment will be determined by our council. If the man is surrendered without resistance, only he will face judgment. The outpost will be spared. It was a reasonable offer, pragmatic even, but everyone understood what it meant. If they handed over Jack, he would almost certainly die. The Apache did not kill quickly or mercifully. They believed in justice that matched the offense. And Dakota's people would make sure Jack understood the full weight of what he had done. The sheriff looked back at Jack, who was still on the roof. Their eyes met for a moment. Jack saw the question there, the temptation, the weight of responsibility before anything else could happen. Jack climbed down from the roof and walked toward the gate. The townspeople watched in silence, some with relief, some with guilt. Tommy tried to stop him, grabbing his arm. But Jack gently pulled free. "It's the right thing," Jack said quietly to his young friend. Jack opened the gate and stepped out into the open space between the outpost and the Apache warriors. The morning sun was hot on his face. He felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely calm. This was his moment, his chance to take responsibility for what he had done. Dakota watched as Jack approached, his expression never changing. When Jack was close enough, Dakota gestured, and 4 warriors rode forward from the Apache line. They surrounded Jack but did not touch him, simply waited. "I'm sorry for what I did," Jack said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was drunk and foolish. I treated Lena with disrespect. I was wrong." Dakota studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "You will come with us. You will face our council. Justice will be served." The warriors guided Jack toward their line. The entire Apache force remained silent. Watching as he was led away, the outpost stood frozen, watching their former resident disappear into the crowd of warriors. As the Apache force began to move, forming up to ride back toward their territory, Dakota turned in his saddle one last time. His eyes met the sheriff's, and he raised his hand in a gesture that might have been respect. Then they were gone, riding back into the desert, dust rising around them until they faded into the shimmering heat. The outpost remained, battered but intact. Safe but forever changed by what had happened. Jack Turner was gone, taken by the Apache to face whatever justice awaited him in their world. The sun continued to climb, indifferent to the drama that had just unfolded, and life in the outpost slowly returned to its uneasy rhythm. The Apache encampment was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Hundreds of tipis arranged in careful rows spread across a wide valley. Fires burning in the center, people moving about with purpose and efficiency. Warriors tended to horses, women worked with hides and food. Children ran between the structures. The community was vast and organized, a living village that operated with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Jack was led to a large tipi in the center of the camp. The council lodge. Dakota dismounted and gestured for Jack to follow. Inside, the space was surprisingly spacious, the floor covered with woven blankets and animal hides. The walls were decorated with symbols and pictures that told stories Jack could not read. At the far end sat 7 elders, their faces weathered by age and experience. They watched Jack with eyes that seemed to look straight into his soul. Dakota spoke to them in Apache. His words measured and deliberate. Jack understood nothing, but he could tell by the tone and the gestures that Dakota was recounting everything that had happened. The insult, the assault, the humiliation. Several times Dakota gestured toward Jack, and the elders' expressions hardened further when Dakota finished. Silence fell over the lodge. One of the elders, an ancient man with silver braids and scars that spoke of countless battles, stood slowly. He looked at Jack with an intensity that was almost physical. "Do you understand what you have done?" The elder asked in English, his accent thick but his words clear. I do, Jack replied, his voice steady. I assaulted a woman, tore her clothes, shamed her in front of many people. There is no excuse for what I did. You are correct, the elder said. There is no excuse, but there may be a path to redemption. If you are willing, Jack nodded, I will do whatever is asked of me. The elders conferred among themselves, speaking in Apache, their voices low but intense. Dakota stood nearby, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. The discussion lasted nearly an hour. Jack stood the entire time, not daring to move or sit. His legs ached. His mind raced with fear and uncertainty. Finally, the eldest elder turned back to Jack. Lena has requested to speak with you, he said. Jack's heart nearly stopped. The doors to the lodge opened, and Lena entered. She wore a new shirt, this one as finely decorated as the one that had been torn. But whole and perfect, she moved with grace and dignity. Her head held high, her eyes clear, when she looked at Jack. He saw the hurt beneath her composed exterior, but also strength. She had survived the shame, and it had not broken her. Why did you do it? She asked, speaking directly to Jack for the first time. I was drunk, Jack began, then stopped himself, shaking his head. That's not a real answer. The truth is, I wanted to feel powerful. I wanted to show off. I wanted to prove myself to the other cowboys. And I used you to do it. I treated you like you didn't matter, like your dignity and respect meant nothing. That was wrong. Lena studied him silently for a long moment. Do you understand what you took from me? She asked. No, Jack admitted, but I'm trying to. You took my choice, Lena said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. You took my ability to feel safe, to walk into a place without wondering if I would be attacked. You took the joy from a moment of trade that should have been simple and good. You took part of my honor and my family's honor. That cannot be easily returned, she paused. And when she spoke again, her voice was softer. But my father taught me that honor can be rebuilt, that the measure of a man is not his worst moment, but how he responds when he realizes what he has done. The elders watched this exchange carefully, their faces revealing nothing. The council has decided your fate, the eldest elder said. You will remain with us for one full cycle of the moon. You will work. You will learn our ways. You will understand the culture of the people you dishonored. You will spend your time learning about Lena's family, about her skills, about her value. You will see her not as an object of conquest, but as a person worthy of respect. After one moon, Dakota added. Speaking now, you will participate in a ritual of restitution. You will give something of value to Lena and her family. Not as payment, because some things cannot be paid for, but as a gesture of your commitment to being better. And if I refuse? Jack asked, knowing the answer but needing to ask. Then you will not leave this camp alive, the eldest elder said simply. Your body will feed the desert, and your name will be forgotten by our people. You will become no one, nothing, Jack nodded slowly. I accept whatever punishment the council determines. Over the following weeks, Jack discovered a life completely foreign to everything he had known. He woke before dawn and worked with the horses, learning Apache techniques for training and caring for animals. He spent afternoons with the women, helping prepare food and learning about the plants and medicines they used. He sat with the elders at night, listening to stories, history, songs, and teachings. Lena would sometimes appear during these gatherings, and slowly, Jack came to understand her as a person. She was skilled in many crafts, knowledgeable about healing, respected among her people. She had dreams and plans, a future she had been building before he tore her shirt and her dignity. Through these interactions, Jack's shame grew deeper and more real. It was no longer abstract guilt. It became concrete understanding of the harm he had caused. Days passed, then weeks. The moon grew full and began to wane again. Jack's skin darkened under the desert sun. His hands became calloused with real work, his mind opened to new ways of thinking. When the lunar cycle finally completed, he was changed, not completely, but fundamentally altered by what he had learned. The night before the ritual, Dakota approached him. Tomorrow you will make your restitution, the warrior said. You will give what you have earned and what you have learned. You will speak words of genuine apology, and then we will see if honor can be restored." Jack nodded, understanding that this was both an ending and a beginning. Whatever happened next would define who he would become. The morning of the ritual dawned clear and bright. Jack had been awake since before sunrise, his stomach churning with nerves and anticipation. Dakota came to fetch him just as the sun broke over the eastern mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. "It is time," Dakota said simply. The entire Apache community gathered in the center of the camp. Forming a large circle around an open space, Jack was led to the middle. Standing alone while hundreds of eyes watched him, Lena sat with her family, her father beside her, a man with sharp features and a bearing of authority. Her mother on her other side, several brothers standing nearby. The eldest elder stepped forward, holding a staff adorned with feathers and symbols. He spoke in Apache for several minutes, his voice carrying the weight of ritual and tradition. Jack understood nothing of the words, but he felt their importance, their gravity. When the elder finished, he gestured to Jack, signaling it was time for him to speak. Jack had prepared carefully for this moment, spending nights rehearsing what he wanted to say. Dakota had helped him find the right words, words that came from genuine understanding rather than empty apology. "I stand before you as a man who committed a grave wrong," Jack began, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I came to your territory with disrespect in my heart. I saw a woman and did not see a person. I saw an opportunity to show off my foolishness and cruelty. I took what was not mine to take. I damaged what was precious." He paused, looking directly at Lena. "Lena, I cannot undo what I did. I cannot give back the safety and confidence that I stole. But I can tell you and your family that I understand now what I took from you. You are skilled, intelligent, kind, and worthy of respect. Your family is proud and strong. Your people are honorable and wise. I was blind to all of this, and my blindness led me to commit a crime that shames me every day." Lena's expression did not change, but Jack saw something flicker in her eyes. "During my time with your people," Jack continued, "I have learned more than I expected. I have learned that honor is not something you prove by tearing others down. It is something you build by lifting others up. I have learned that strength is not found in dominating the weak, but in respecting the powerful. I have learned that every person, regardless of their heritage or culture, deserves dignity." The circle was completely silent. Even the children had stopped moving. "I cannot change what I did," Jack said, "but I can change who I am. I will spend the rest of my life being better than I was. I will tell the story of my shame to anyone who will listen, so that others might learn from my mistake without having to commit it themselves. I will never again take for granted the right to walk safely in another person's space." I will remember Lena's face, and I will use that memory to guide me toward being a man worthy of the second chance I have been given. Jack then reached into a pouch at his side and withdrew a beautifully crafted knife. The handle was made from deer bone, carved with intricate patterns by Apache hands. He had made it himself over the past weeks, working carefully with tools and materials provided by the craftsmen of the camp. It was the finest thing he had ever created. He presented it to Lena's father. "This is made from the labor of my own hands, from materials your people provided, with techniques your people taught me. It represents my commitment to understanding and respecting your culture, to never again treating Apache people with disrespect." Lena's father stood and accepted the knife, examining it carefully. He nodded slowly, then looked at the eldest elder. The elder spoke again in Apache, his words seeming to carry significance and finality. When he finished, he turned to Jack. "The council has heard your words," the elder said, "and has judged them to be genuine. You came to us as a man drunk on arrogance. You leave us as a man who has tasted humility. That is not nothing." He paused, his ancient eyes studying Jack with what might have been respect. "You will return to your people," the elder continued. "You will carry this story with you. You will tell them what you have learned. You will be a bridge between our worlds. You will remember that every person you meet is someone's daughter or son, someone's sister or brother. You will treat them accordingly. Dakota stepped forward and gripped Jack's shoulder. You have done well, Cowboy, better than I expected. Lena's father has decided there is no need for further punishment. Your debt has been paid. As Jack was being prepared to leave the camp, Lena approached him one final time. I forgive you, she said simply. Not because what you did was acceptable, but because I see that you have genuinely changed. Go back to your world and be the man you have become here. The ride back to the outpost took 2 days. Dakota and several warriors accompanied Jack to ensure his safe passage. When the familiar buildings of the settlement came into view, Jack felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief at returning to familiar territory, but also sadness at leaving what he had learned behind. The townspeople watched in stunned silence as Jack rode through the gates with the Apache warriors. They had expected him to return in pieces, if at all. Instead he rode with dignity. Bearing the marks of his experience but visibly alive and whole, the sheriff met him at the edge of town. Welcome back, he said, his expression full of questions. I'm different now, Jack said simply. And I have much to teach. Word of what had happened spread quickly through the territory. Some called Jack a coward for submitting to Apache justice. Others recognized that he had done something far braver. He had admitted his wrong and genuinely changed. Over time, his story became legendary. Not as a tale of conquest or heroism, but as a story of redemption. Jack never left Arizona. Instead, he stayed in the territory, working to build relationships between the Apache and the settler communities. He would visit the Apache camp occasionally, and Lena would welcome him as someone who had earned the right to walk in their space with respect. The incident that had nearly destroyed the outpost became its most important lesson: that actions have consequences, that respect must be earned, and that sometimes the greatest strength is found in admitting when you were wrong and genuinely trying to become better. Years later, when young men would drink too much and become arrogant, older men would tell them the story of Jack Turner, the cowboy who learned humility the hard way, and most would listen, understanding that some lessons are worth learning before you make the mistakes. The desert remembered, the Apache remembered, and Jack Turner lived with that memory every day for the rest of his life, using it to become a bridge between two worlds that had nearly gone to war because of one man's drunken moment of cruelty.